we switch over to the UK and to Biro Florin from Jexo, who will discuss, show us today how to prioritize your backlog in Jira more efficiently. And with that, Biro, over to you and your presentation. Welcome and thank you for being here. Um,
Thank you
and
so
I
much.
and I will just disappear and see you on the other side.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you for introduction. For anyone that hasn't met me yet in the call, my name is Biro. I'm a co-founder at Jexo. Me and my partner, Nikki, started Jexo back in 2018. Um, we started because we're using Jira at the previous company that we were working, and we needed a solution for tracking our releases better, and we came up with an app that we designed an app that we would use internally, and we realized, well, this could be something that would be beneficial for others as well. And we started looking into the Atlassian Marketplace, and the rest is, how they say, history. Where our background is project management. We spent over 5 years building a project management platform that introduced machine learning, AI, and data insights to help teams, to help guide teams and manage their work properly. So basically, we were doing this before Atlassian recently made it cool with their announcements of smarts and such. So that's our expertise, which we have now today transitioned into Jira. We build PPM solutions for Jira Cloud. And today, I want to talk to you a bit about backlog management in Jira. How do we get around this better backlog management in Jira? And just to give you an idea of what I'm going to talk about and the sections. First of all, why does backlog management matters? Let's take it back to the basics. Why do people manage and groom and prioritize their backlog? Um, how do you actually prioritize in Jira currently today? The common bad habits that people adopt, and I've seen previously in places that I work for, and I've been guilty of as well. And how can you solve that? Some of those bad habits, correct those bad habits by using a prioritization framework, and what tooling you have at your disposal, basically to promote the right habits and use some of these prioritization frameworks. So let's start from the beginning. Um, why does backlog management matters? Why do you need to prioritize, groom first your backlog and prioritizes? Well, first of all, without a process, your backlog can become clogged with inactionable items, and this will always cause a lack of focus. Um, and we've seen this, and I've seen this many times before, and I was guilty of it at the beginning very early, where you have these huge backlogs of items, some of them very important, that are just lost among the noise, and then that causes a lot of, let's say unhappiness within the team, because you have stakeholders that haven't met their requirements and such, because the backlog is spaghetti, to put it like that. And in contrast, a well-managed backlog leads to a more efficient and focused team, without any doubt. And often this results in more predictable outcomes for your project. If you're able to track, trace, and arrange your backlog, and have it structured and clean, you're more likely to succeed in your project. So I guess this kind of makes sense, and just wanted to mention because I had a significant experience with this, not in a good way. That kind of um, was the catalyst of me starting to do a bit of research on prioritization frameworks, and things like that. So moving on from this, how do you currently prioritize in Jira? And I've kind of put on the board some components that might look familiar to people in the call. Um, but basically in Jira, you have two main approaches to prioritization. Um, and that is the priority field, in terms of decision indicators, the priority field, and also the ability to rank your board or your backlog. And we all know about this because this is how we usually start and prioritize our work. And these are usually decision indicators, but usually in Jira, how you come to these decision indicators is through factors that help you take this decision. And in Jira, the one predominant factor is the effort-based factor. By default, you have time tracking, which everyone probably knows, where you can assign how much time does a task takes to complete, and then you log progress against that. And you also have the story point estimate field that you can enable in your project. Both of these, as I mentioned, they're effort-based factors. So this makes sense. And fundamentally, this is the, I would say, the bare basic way to look at grooming your backlog, prioritizing, is by looking at the effort of an item and taking decisions on where to position that item in your backlog. There's also quite a bit of material created by Atlassian. Mainly, you can find information about prioritization, backlog grooming, some of these features in Jira, either in the Agile Coach videos that Atlassian provides on YouTube, or by using the team playbooks. So these would teach you how to conduct your meetings to establish work priorities. Okay, so everything is wonderful so far, but what's wrong with that? Fundamentally, that's how the majority sees priority, and that's how I kind of saw priority, the ability to prioritize, up until not very long time ago. But there are a few things that I would say that this, from my perspective, simplistic approach to prioritization might cause. First of all, in Jira specifically, there are no concrete guidelines on how to define a task effort. So when you conduct your story points definition for a task, or your time estimate, there's no specific guidelines or no other factors that can help you in define why that effort has been assigned to that task. I don't know if that makes sense. And every team, and not even every team, but even within the same team, people have different definition of what effort is. I think the second point is that there are usually more factors that influence priority decision than just effort. And more often than not, those factors will be will the various stakeholders will care about those factors that might not be necessarily effort related. For example, the impact that solving a task might have to um, the product customers or to other stakeholders and such. So these additional factors by default with the vanilla Jira conditions and features are not taken in consideration. And the third item, there's not really, and I've watched all of the material that Atlassian provides on this. It's not really standard for capturing the logic behind prioritization decisions. So when you sit down with your team and you play priority poker, or planning poker, or you estimate the tasks and you discuss as a team, more often than not, you would need to justify your decision to the rest of the stakeholders, to the organization. And there are no clear patterns or standards in Jira or provided by Atlassian on how you do that. So these are some of the things that are not taking in consideration by a very simplistic prioritization approach in Jira. And this usually leads to common bad habits, which is confusion. Your team is confused because there's very scarce information of why the rest took a decision on a task on a specific direction. Time wasting because you need to repeat yourself over and over again and make sure that everyone's on board with the thoughts around your prioritization practice. And also one thing that we've seen quite a lot, and I'm probably one of the most guilty people about this, the loudest voice in the room wins in a situation where the prioritization process is vague and inconsistent. I admit it, I am quite a loud person, and more often than not, I would influence the room because I would speak the loudest and I would make my opinion heard, and maybe some of the other guys in the room would not feel that included, and I would have my way because I was an extrovert and the loudest person in the room. So having a vague and inconsistent prioritization process leads to confusion, time wasting, and most importantly, it doesn't make for an inclusive prioritization activity. But I guess that's where the backlog prioritization methods or templates per se come into play. By using a prioritization template, a framework and such, you basically enable a standard in your team that everyone follows and everyone understands in order to prioritize any type of work. And there's a variety of frameworks out there, like value versus effort, ICE, RICE, weighted shortest job first, and such. And they all tailor better to different situations, different team sizes, organization structures, and such. But fundamentally, they all have the same principles at core, which is the fact that in order to establish how important a task is, you need to include the standardized factors. We call them metrics. So you need to include the standardized factors into an equation. We call it scoring formula to establish the priority of a task. We call it priority score. And this goes back to what I said, that by default in Jira, you set a priority decision, you take a priority decision based on an effort most of the time. For example, let's say score or time value or something like that. Well, that effort information in reality is a factor that influences the prioritization decision, but it shouldn't be the only factor. As I mentioned earlier, you will have stakeholders, various stakeholders in your team that will care about different aspects of potentially, be it the outcome of that task or various let's say links to that tasks. I don't know, I'm being a bit vague, but to give you an example, for us, so as I mentioned, we build Jira apps, right? So when we prioritize what new feature to develop, we look at, of course, the effort, the size of an issue, of an improvement, for example. We looked at the impact that it has on our customers and such. And depending on the type of backlog that we prioritize, we might also look at confidence or something like that. And I'll explain a bit about this. I'll give 2 examples in a bit. But yeah, fundamentally, and this is usually the more stakeholders and the more complex your organization structure is, and the more dependencies on a specific project or a specific backlog of tasks, the more varied your metrics will be. And with every single, now the scoring formula, so you have a bunch of metrics, like for example, well, this if we put this feature into our app in production, then we'll have 20 happy customers. But this feature will take us 2 days to deliver. And we're actually not very confident that it will be 2 days, or we're not very confident in anything that we say about this feature. All of those are metrics that you will put in this, let's say, grinder, that in this mixer, that is the scoring formula, which is an equation that you put together in order to take in consideration and evaluate all of the metrics. And at the very bottom, after you mix them all together, you have a priority score that you can assign to your issue. And usually the rule of thumb is the higher the priority score, the more urgent the items are. So you put together, you create your scoring formula in such a way that these factors, they influence, they give you the final score, and the higher that score is, the more important the item is. And one of the things, and I was talking about inclusiveness and such, one of the things that we've noticed with our customers and we started doing is assigning owners for each individual metric. So, for example, you will have, let's say, one department in the organization that is a stakeholder of what your team is doing, a specific task, for example, that will own one metric. Like I mentioned, keep on repeating this, but I think it's better to keep it simple. For example, let's say the impact that has for customers. let's say your team is prioritizing, you're part of a product development team, and your team is prioritizing work to pick up next. This specific metric might be of interest to the customer success team. So the customer success team owns the impact of of an issue, that specific metric. Your team might own the, let's say, confidence and the effort metrics and such. So then you have multiple owners for each individual metric. The more complex your prioritization framework would look like, the more owners you can assign for each individual metric. All right, so I'll give you some examples, and I'll start with the easiest template, which is the value versus effort. And the reason why I call it the easiest is because you already think of effort, let's say the time spent or the complexity points, and that's a bit easier to understand. So in this scenario where we have the value versus effort framework, you will have two metrics. So you would have the value and effort metric. And usually these are the questions that you would ask the team when deciding how to basically how to assign, how to define the value and the effort of a task. For example, for value, how much does it contribute to our goal, this specific task? And the effort, how difficult is it to deliver this task? And I'm showing a couple of examples here with stars. These could be the value, basically the options that you give your team for value and effort metrics. So tell me how much does this contribute to our goal, using stars from 1 star to 5 star. And then tell me in t-shirt sizes, how much effort do we need to apply to deliver this this item? And then the score, the final score that you apply to this specific task, is represented by a formula that says you must divide effort by value. Based on this formula, you'll start creating a backlog of scored tasks. And you can, for example, order them by, let's say, well, I want the highest scoring tasks because I know that those are the biggest value and the lowest effort. And that's how you start arranging your backlog based on data, based on metrics, and including everyone in the team, rather than, let's say, just an effort metric that someone defined behind closed doors, which usually happens quite often. I'll give you another example. The second example is, it's actually not value versus effort. Forgot to change the title of the board. Hold on, let me see if I can change this live. You change? No, it didn't. Okay, so this one is actually ICE as the metrics mentioned. So impact, confidence, and ease. It's quite similar to the previous one, though we introduce a third, basically a third metric in here. Impact, you can relate it to, for example, the value, as you can see, is the same question: how much does this contribute to our goal? And this is another example on how you can give options to your team to rate the impact from net zero to very high impact. There's also the ease, which can translate to value versus effort, the effort metric. How hard is this to implement? And again, this is a different example showing you small, medium, large t-shirt sizes, but less options here. And then we added a new metric concept, which is confidence. I mentioned this earlier. How confident are you this will work? And again, you can have from no confidence options to very high. And then in order to calculate the score and figure out where you place that specific item, you multiply impact by confidence by ease. The reason why, one thing that I didn't mention, the reason why you have value usually because it's hard to multiply an option that says low if you cannot quantify that. So these frameworks, these prioritization frameworks, only work if you for each metric you have options that can translate into numbers that can contribute to the final formula and to the final score of that specific item. So that's kind of what prioritization methods are. There are a few of them out there. We have on our blog quite a bit of information about various prioritization methods. I'm not going to go through all of them now. Some of them are better for different type of setups, different type of organization, larger organization, like you can use weighted short job first. And we also created our own prioritization method best suited for quick wins. And boring enough, we called it the quick wins method. We have a webinar on the quick wins method and how you can basically establish a healthy culture of quick wins in your organization. So we can share afterwards more information about some of the articles and some of the content that we wrote on these prioritization methods. But fundamentally, this is all okay, but we have to tie it back into Jira. That's where we do our work. And actually, true story, when we started prioritizing our work in for the apps that we were using, and we had the need for a more complex method of prioritization, we started hacking various solutions from spreadsheets to Airtables to various things to give us these prioritization factors, additional prioritization factors, to enable us to be a bit more inclusive and comprehensive when we prioritize. So then we realized, well, actually, that should be something that it works in Jira, because that's where we have all of our items, our work items. So there should be the ability for you to generate these metrics that contribute towards how you prioritize your work in Jira alongside your issues. So long and behold, we decided to build it like we usually decide to build everything that we're missing in Jira. So that's how Foxley was born. Foxley is our backlog prioritization app. It helps you score your backlog, and it's for Jira Cloud, and it has predefined priority templates. Now, bear in mind, all of the above that I mentioned, you can do without the inclusion of an app. But you would find you could do this in spreadsheets, and actually we have a template. If anyone wants, we can share some spreadsheet templates that we used to use back in the days before we build something in Jira. But it creates overhead. So this is one of the apps, and is our variant of how to do this in Jira directly. It will come with the predefined priority templates that I've mentioned earlier, which is ICE, RICE, value versus effort, weighted short job first, and our own quick wins prioritization method. And you can also create your own custom template or if you found a template online as a standard, you can definitely create it in Foxley, as long as it has metrics and it involves a scoring formula. You can play around with the existing templates. If your team, for example, uses a different type of options or ratings, let's say you don't use t-shirt sizes and use a different type of mechanism to label those options, you can edit and customize all of that. You can personalize priority metrics, and there are a few types of metrics that you can choose from, like labels, numbers, rating, or text. And most importantly, you can also customize the scoring formula. And this has been crucial for us to make sure that we have from day one, because for example, Nikki and I have our own internal project for product strategy, and and it's a project that only her and I use. And the type of items that we have there are bigger, more strategic, long-term um, activities. So we had to come up with a formula, a scoring formula for those items that wasn't the predefined template for each of them. So it was very important for us to be able to allow you to customize as much as you want the scoring formula. Um, and in terms of how you actually go about prioritizing your backlog, um, we have a backlog view that is present in every single project, and it's under the priorities tab, um, which gives you a list of all of your issues in that specific project. Um, and you can quickly prioritize all of the items. And again, this was one of the requirements that we set from the MVP, that we wanted to be able to not spend time moving around from task to task, and have a full picture of our entire backlog and be able to inline edit all of the metrics and establish prioritization scores within the same view and in a very quick way. So that's why we've implemented the ability to edit within this backlog table all of your metrics and instantly show the newly associated score based on that. And you have here, as an example, a bit of a custom custom method. So in this example, we have business value. How valuable is this item for the business? The time criticality, another aspect that very often you don't see taken in consideration in teams that only use the size of the item, and there's no way for you to associate the time criticality to an item. Risk reduction and estimated size. So this is just showing another example of custom metrics. And we try as much as possible, because we look at this as your new standard for backlog grooming, to give every single team the ability to filter, to have a flexible filter and sorting capabilities, which includes the custom JQL field where you can filter and sort based on however you filter and sort on when you search for issues. The prioritization scoring number and all of the metrics that you associate with that specific item are also available in the issue view. So if, let's say, for example, you need quick access to a specific item, outside the context of your backlog view, you can access all of that information and update all of that information in the issue view as well. And we also offer another type of visualization, which is usually quite important. And I should have mentioned this when I've defined what prioritization templates and methods are. Most of the time you'll find that the prioritization matrix is quite an important different dimension view of you taking a decision and picking up the items that you need to work on, because you have quadrants, and these quadrants can be defined to, for example, one quadrant based on your y and x axis can be, let's say, low hanging fruits sitting in that quadrant, while on another could be items that have a long-term impact, but also are bigger. And then another quadrant that represents um, bigger activities that you might want to have extra care when you prioritize and assign and plan for. So this view is quite important, and in Foxley you can customize the what you see on the XY axis as well as the bubble size. In this example, you see the X axis is the impact, and the X axis, and the Y axis is the ease, while the bubble size is the actual final score. So it makes it very easy for you to spot items that you need to look at. And you can also filter based on stuff that's not done. Let's say if you just want to plan and pick up work. And also, our app is automation ready. All of the data that is generated by Foxley, your prioritization metrics, the scoring, all of this stuff is attached to your Jira issues as custom fields, or go bit technical, entity properties as well. So you can utilize that to create various automation pipelines. Like, for example, if in this case, when the story points, if you're also using story points, when the story points field changes, you can edit a specific metric. Let's say you have a complexity metric or effort metric in Foxley, you can alter that automatically by introducing one of these automation pipelines. And I guess that's kind of it from me. I don't know. I hope that some of this made sense, but I want to open to Q&A and see if anyone has any questions for me about the prioritization methods, about Foxley and such.
Thank you very much. So I will start off with a question. One question from my side would be, can I export all the priority backlog information for a report? That is maybe not a really important question, but
no, I think that's a critical question, to be honest. If I just think about all of the customers that we have for any apps, there's always the question of, can I export this data? Can I have it somewhere else than Jira? And the answer is currently in our app, you cannot through the app. We're planning to implement something of that sort, but because you can assign the metrics and the score as custom fields, you can go through the native channels of exporting the list, your backlog, with the additional custom fields, and you will have all of that metric and scoring information attached. At least I've not tried it so far because I didn't have the need for, but I guess that's an option.
Okay. And the reverse option. So you mentioned Excel sheets. Sometimes it's quicker to make a batch change on an Excel sheet and just say, hey, and then import that prioritization data. Is that a possibility, or is that something that you thought about?
That's actually a really interesting point. No, have not thought about that so far, and the reason being is because um, we know how easy it is to update spreadsheets, and that was the whole point why we wanted the table, the backlog, to be inline editable, because you can quickly edit stuff exactly how you can quickly edit cells in a spreadsheet. That was one of the main desires for the product, actually. But that's an interesting point. Yeah, that could potentially be something that we implement in the future. But we specifically made it easy to utilize and update so that you don't need to use spreadsheets anymore.
Forget Excel. Just call it bulk changes. So a quick way to do a bulk change for something. So that would be maybe interesting.
So will the app will be available for data center version also?
Uh, so as I mentioned at the beginning, we are strictly cloud provider, so we've not stepped into server or data center. It is a completely different approach to building products, and I think for the time being, we're going to stay in cloud. So no, at the time being, it's not possible. But again, a lot of the stuff that I've explained can be applied outside Jira, because these are standards and frameworks, and probably can be achieved in some sort of, probably you need a bit more technical skills too, but you would be able to achieve that with some sort of custom fields and automation and things like that combined together. It's just that Foxley gives you this nice, pleasant, crisp interface, and does it all for you in the background.
First of all, thank you, Biro, for the introduction of this nice product. Is it possible to have these metrics on all issue types, or does it matter what kind of issue types you have?
Um, that's the reverse of a question that I was expecting, to be honest. And I'll tell you why, because a lot of people ask us the opposite. So yes, to answer your question, first of all, you can prioritize anything from epics to stories to bug to sub bugs and so on. The reason why I'm saying I was expecting the opposite is because when folks try our app, some of the questions that we usually get is, well, I prioritize bugs different than I prioritize epics or tasks or such. And at the moment, the tool, basically you have one backlog, and you can assign your prioritization templates per project. Sure, you can reuse the same template, that custom or default, to other projects, to other projects as well. But it is per project. So that means that you wouldn't be able to go as granular as to say, well, I'll have these metrics for bugs and these metrics for epics, for example. You'd use the same metrics for all of the item types in your project. That being said, and I know you haven't asked this question, but just for everyone that's curious, what we usually recommend is, if you have a backlog of bugs and a backlog of user stories, put them in separate projects, if possible, and have different prioritization templates for each project.
Okay, understood. Thank you. And then the second question is regarding the ice cube metrics. I was not sure if the value is there helpful. If you have 3 factors and the SML values 5, 10, and 20 is in this direction you have shown. I was not sure if it is helpful. The ease one, the third column.
Yeah. So right, so ease was small, medium, large. So yeah, so it yeah, you're right, it doesn't it might not make sense in some scenarios, but for me, for example, if I look at it, ease, um, it's a small thing to do. That's how it's how I think about it, right? So how easy is this to implement? Well, it's small, it's easy, right? The point is, you can define any type of options. So if you think of ease, for example, as complex, not complex, or meh, middle ground, then you can use those. I think the most important aspect is, rather than the label, I think the labels and these options are made for the team to settle into a user-friendly standard. People don't think in numbers. It's very hard to think of absolutely every option and such in number.
Yeah.
So the numbers still exist. The label can be whatever the team feels most comfortable with, as long as there's a number associated to it.
Yeah, it doesn't look like a low-hanging fruit if you have L and maybe you would, for low-hanging fruit, would choose S and 5, and then the L with 20 would be a higher product when you multiplicate impact and confidence in these.
Yeah, that's very true. So these should be the reverse. So this is a mistake
something like this. Yeah,
in the screen. Yeah, you're perfectly right.
But I like the approach to have here values which shows complex or not complex. This would be also fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Understood.
Because you're right. Because the formula is multiplied, then these should be in reverse in order for you to prioritize higher the things that are low-hanging fruit, like you mentioned.
Yeah. And we are working on this. We try to use T-shirt sizes and so on, and yeah, it would be really helpful. Yeah.
Thank you for pointing that out. I'll change that in the presentation.
Okay. That answers all your questions, Daniel.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then I move on to a question from the chat. And do you allow multiple configurations per project, let's say for a shared project? And then a follow-up question to that, do you allow shared configurations for multiple boards projects?
So to answer the first one, no, as I mentioned earlier, basically you have one configuration for a project. We don't have the concept of boards yet. That's something that's coming. So soon at one point we'll enable you the ability to create these type of boards and switch between them based on what you want to prioritize in the project level. But at the time being is just one template, one project. To answer the second one, yes. So if you create a custom template and you associate it with the project, you can then go into a different project and select that custom template and associate it with that second project. So you can have one template for as many projects as you need.
There's one. Can you have that matrix also as an overview on multiple projects? Which matrix? I guess
I'll share and show everyone what the question is referring to. Okay, so I think it's this specific matrix, which is the prioritization matrix. That is coming really soon. Just to give, I'll give it away. I usually don't give features away in public forum, but so we're planning to implement very soon the ability for you to cross-project prioritize, if that makes sense. So in a project level, you'll be able to select all of the projects that have the same template. That's an important key. So all of the projects that have the same template, you'll be able to select and show all of the tasks in those projects so you can prioritize. And then, yes, of course, you will also be able to select those projects in this additional matrix view and basically show issues from multiple projects rendered on this matrix.
Oh, okay. So next release will be when approximately?
Um, well,
Ballpark, not the
winter's
date.
coming. um, we are releasing. So what I've just shown you, that version of the matrix is not yet in production. So that was a quick sneak peek on that. It's coming probably today or tomorrow. We're planning to release it, and then for the cross project prioritization. Probably somewhere at the beginning of next year or in winter. Again, it's quite hard winter time. People need holidays,
Okay.
so yeah.
Yeah.
But probably
All those.
either end of this year or very early next year.
Okay, but that's not that far away. That's weeks, not months,
No.
basically. Yeah. So,
Another
okay. We have
question.
another question. Do you have a general overview list of the configurations and the projects using that configuration? So basically, if you have
Yeah.
which template you used on which project, I guess.
And I'll show you. It's very simplistic. There's not a different admin configuration panel. What you'll find is in where you select the template, you will get notified that this template is also used in these other projects. So if you change, you will see where the templates are used. Yeah, for example, you see the ice is used in multiple templates in multiple projects. So yeah, so that's how you see the association. There's no tailored screen for it. Can I put for the admin overview? Yes, you can. I'll make sure that I write that down as features, and we'll let you know. We are planning to, at the moment, just to mention, this is open for everyone. So everyone in your project, in your team, can access the priorities table and can update the numbers and such, and also do changes to the templates. We've had this approach with Swanly as well of inclusiveness, Octo components releases. That was one of the benefits. We enabled your team to help you manage some of this work. With Swanly right now we've implemented permissions. We're planning to implement permissions for Foxley as well, so that you can control who can do what in your project. So if you don't want someone to update let's say the prioritization template, you'll be able to just assign that to Jira admin or something like that. But for now, it's open to everyone in your project team. I'll just say to mention, as I mentioned, this is strictly available for cloud. We launched the MVP back in June, and we've kind of had I would call it a star rise with Foxley since June. It is selected as a staff pick as well, so it's on the homepage, and it seems like everyone's enjoying prioritization, which again, it's something that I was expecting not to be as a standard, because Jira gives you a specific standard, as I discussed about it, and everyone kind of takes that, but it's really rewarding to see folks open to utilizing more comprehensive prioritization methods outside what Jira gives you.
Yeah, and we have another question which goes exactly in that direction. Are there any side effects to the overall Jira priorities? Because these require Jira administrators' permissions. So if I create a template in Foxley, does that change the priorities, the general priorities in any way?
So there's no No, so there's no connection to your priority field, if that's the question. So the metrics and the scoring formula are additional attributes associated with your Jira issues. They don't impact your other prioritization fields. They can, if
Okay.
you set up automation. So you can have, for example, you can create an automation to say, well, whenever the score in Foxley is higher than X, then change priority to high or something like that. So you can, but
So
out of the box, no, it doesn't impact any of the native prioritization attributes.
okay. So it doesn't replace the native priority field. It's a separate field basically. So I can also call them the same. I could have high, medium, highest, or whatever,
Yeah, exactly.
and that wouldn't create a conflict with Jira in any way. Okay, so understood. The question is, should I remove my normal priority, the standard priority field, when I install Foxley, just to avoid conflicts with, let's say, quick filters or whatever, if I'm looking for priorities and want to do something with that?
That is a very interesting question. We do, but not everyone does. So we do have customers that actually, they have stakeholders that have no interest, let's say, in knowing the details of prioritization in Foxley, and they're used to the priority field and they want to see that priority field. So as I mentioned earlier, some customers, what they do is they set up rules on how to change the priority field based on the score. So if the score is higher than this, put that. If it's lower than this, put that, and such. I would personally recommend, if you're using a prioritization method, then you don't need the native medium, high, low. That is too much of a generic approach if you're going to use this prioritization. That being said, if we think of the fact that in Foxley you cannot have multiple prioritization templates in the same time, you could leverage the priority field for a different type of issue. So like, for example, let's say you need a prioritization template for stories and feature improvements, but then bugs, you don't need a complex template and metrics for that. You just want to prioritize medium, high, low. So you can continue to use that prioritization approach, excuse me, for certain type of issues.
Thank you very much, Biro. That was
Brilliant.
interesting.
Thank you so much.
And yeah, have a good evening, because we're almost in the same time zone, so it's dark where you are as well. And hope to see you around very soon in the real somewhere. We
I'm
learned
sure
at
we
the
will,
beginning
definitely.
that you are frequently in Berlin once travel is allowed again. And don't forget your different colored passport next time when you come, because you have a different passport then.
Yes.
So with that, happy holidays and happy New Year, and a better New Year than this one. And see you soon. Have a nice evening and see you around. So bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining and for the amazing engagement. Thank you and have a lovely evening.